This is a practice for the water element. We will be playing with the kidney and the bladder meridians. And before we begin, I wanted to talk about a few things so that practice is accessible and supportive and empowering for everyone at home. First off, the kidney meridian, the primary access point that we'll be tapping into today is through the adductors, primarily the gracilis, which is the long skinny adductor more towards the back of the thigh. When we look at gracilis, it shares an attachment point with a few other muscles right here medially below the knee. So I would like for people to just gently palpate, make sure that you don't have any tenderness through here. And if you do have knee issues, I'd like for you to be mindful of that, and I will certainly give some modifications for you. The other region that we'll be focusing on kidney meridian wise is through our gastrocs, which is a fusiform muscle group along the back of our calf region here. We will be looking at the bladder meridian, which when you view some of the partner videos, you'll see it runs primarily through the fascia and musculature along the back body through the superficial back line. And so that being said, the majority of our practice is going to be focused on releasing and opening the inner thigh region, releasing and engaging the back body. So first off, I'd like everyone to begin in a Baddha Konasana posture, so bound ankle pose. We can draw our feet together, allow the knees to fall open, and I'd like you to look at your natural range of motion. Just see what feels comfortable to you. Also have a peek at what's happening in your pelvis. And if possible, just join me in rocking forward onto the front of your sits bones. We want to start to imagine the pelvis as a rocking chair, and we want to tip more onto the front of those rocking chair rims at the very bottom of our chair. Once we've done that, you'll feel that your pelvis is starting to have a nice anterior tilt, belly button is starting to point more toward the floor, and we have a nice natural curvature in the lumbar spine. Now, to access and highlight the gracilis more, there's a few different things that you can do. First off, you can try lifting one leg and placing it just a little bit higher than the other, and this is going to accentuate the gracilis on that side. And this is where we're going to start. I'd like for you to flex both of your feet. If you prefer to use a block for underneath your foot, you're certainly welcome to do so. And we're going to take an inhale breath here. And with your exhale breath, lift your rib cage away from your hip bones and gently start to reach forward. It's as lengthening as though you're going to reach towards the wall in front of you, not a bowing where we round the spine. You can clasp your foot with your hand if you like, and just start to drop in. Become aware of the sensations that you might be feeling. Allow your neck to relax. The neck should be soft and in line with the shoulders. Allowing your breath to roll into the sides of the rib cage. So getting both into the back body and those inner thighs within the same pose. Creating space and opportunity around the kidney and bladder meridians. The main intention of this practice is to soothe anxiety, to have a nurturing and building effect on whoever's practicing. With an element of tapping into your own endurance. If for any reason this is feeling painful or uncomfortable, you can have the same effect on the body approaching this pose from a chair. You might try being seated, and you can actually take that foot, placing it above your thigh, bowing forward and having that same effect. So we're going to stay here just a little bit longer. When you feel ready, check in with your pelvis, finding that same alignment. And we're going to go to the opposite side, taking that foot, placing it on top of the other foot, and bow down. I want the main sensation to be felt through the thighs. If you're feeling anything through the knees, I suggest trying the chair variation, or perhaps try bringing your other leg out of the way. You can place your foot onto a block or what have you, and just find a spot where you're within a certain range where the knee doesn't hurt. You can also try placing a block underneath the knee so that it's supported, or wrapping your knee with a blanket or a towel. So just allowing everything to soften around your hip and through the inner thigh. If you feel any discomfort underneath that base foot, you can also just take your yoga mat, fold it over, or place a towel under the foot so that you're not getting that sensation. With any meridian practice, we always release the fascia first, holding in more yin-like postures. And then we get into those muscles a little more deeply, inviting a yang element, so inviting more movement and vinyasa approach. Continuing to focus on those inner thighs for a while longer, we're going to extend that same leg out to the side, coming up onto the toes of this foot. As you do that, you might find that your shin bone is starting to point down toward the floor, and just start to rock forward. You can do this from a seated posture, Same, just by holding the foot and drawing it in. Let's take that foot in towards our inner thigh. And we're going to shift ourselves so that we're facing toward the toes of our extended foot, rocking onto the top of our bottom foot here. Toes shining towards the ceiling. And take a moment drawing your sits bones back, so rocking onto the front of the rocking chair, inviting a soft curvature in the low back. And for those of you with knee issues, same thing as before. Find a position that feels safe and gentle on your knee. And perhaps you might need to place a block underneath the knee for support so that you're stable. Finding a place that feels comfortable where you're supported, we're allowing a slight lateral rotation in the bottom of our leg through the shin. So rocking more onto the top of the leg and inviting an opening through the adductors here. Sitting nice and tall. You never have to do the full pose to have the full experience. And that's what's really beautiful about the practice. Just go where your body invites you to go and do the work there, and you'll have the same benefit as the person doing a different version or expression of the posture. So if it's available to you and you'd like a little more sensation moving into the back body and into those hamstrings, you can start to invite a lengthening through the spine, drawing the rib cage away from the pelvis. And imagine that you could reach your head toward the top of the toes. I know that this is Janu Shirshasana and the name means head to knee, but think instead of reaching your head to your toes, and your spine will stay in a more healthy alignment. It's so healthy to do one side of the body at a time so that we can become aware of where we're weak and where we're tight. And we can start to invite subtle changes so that our weaker side can develop and our side that's shortened and restricted can lengthen, and eventually we come to this beautiful place where our two sides are balanced. It's really being mindful of each side and trying to match, find a place to meet and practice at the middle. Those of you who are practicing at home, if the floor doesn't feel accessible right now, maybe you have an injury or it's just not comfortable for you, you can also utilize the stool again if you're seated on a chair, and just place your heel on another chair and just start to invite whatever movement is available to you. You don't have to be on a yoga mat to have this same experience. Let's take a moment just to play here. Giving your body time to communicate anything that might be going on, just listening and observing. Inviting a quieting of the mind. And let's come back to center. And we'll bring both of those legs back into bound angle pose or Baddha Konasana. And take a moment to press the arms into the inner thighs and just observe if there's any difference between the sensations in the two legs. And we want to be focusing more on the gracilis. So we're going to be extending that leg out to the side again. And take a moment pressing more into the toes. And just listening to the body, so inviting some sensation through that inner thigh. Staying with an easy breath. Letting it roll into the sides of the waist, the low back. And we're going to bring that foot in, tucking onto the top of the foot, allowing a lateral rotation through the shin bone. And we'll want to bring our leg into meet so that our heart is facing toward our extended leg. And again, if there's any knee issues, just find that place that is pain-free and accessible, placing your leg in a comfortable, safe, sturdy position. Want to check in with that pelvis, make sure that the sits bones are drawing back, lengthening through the heart. And that's the same thing as before. Lifting the rib cage, lengthening the head toward the toes, creating space in the spine. Just taking time, allowing your body to unravel, whether that's a matter of minutes or a matter of months, letting go of any expectations or agendas that you're placing on yourself. This practice is about finding those areas where you're limited and restricted, really seeking them out. It's not about finding the advanced posture so much as it is about finding that place where you feel stuck and taking time to play there and allow the pose to marinate and dissolve whatever is restricting you. Really let yourself drop in and experience where you feel sensation in the pose. Is it in that QL region in your low back, along the side of the body where your leg is bent, or maybe more into your hamstrings or even your calf? Where are you feeling it? Where do you feel the pose? So let's slowly come up out of the posture. We'll take our leg out to the side as we start to draw both feet to the long edge of the mat. We're going to take a moment and just do a seated cat-cow. For those of you, if you're sitting in a chair, you're welcome to do this same technique. We're just going to embrace the knees or cup the knees with our hands. And we're going to draw the heart up. Take an inhale breath. And as we drop into the more dynamic movements through the practice, think of a cat when it stretches and how it engages every muscle as though the body is yawning. So moving with the muscles engaged fully is actually going to invite more transformation and change. Really let your shoulders roll into it, just inviting a little more movement through the spine. And we're going to draw our left leg out to the side, standing nice and tall. And I'd like you to line up the edge of your foot directly in center in front of you, as though you were coming into bound angle pose. Lift up through the hips. And you can do this with a stool as well if you want to stay seated and this feels uncomfortable for you. And just focus on doing one leg at a time as opposed to doing both legs at once. Toes shining towards the ceiling, stepping into the lateral edge of the foot. Lift up through the rib cage and lengthen the top of the head. So coming into a half bound angle pose. Really allowing those thighs to open up, engage the musculature through your inner thighs. Feel your adductors fire, fingers lightly touching the floor, and feel this posture as a strong pose through the legs. And just feel how head to knee pose prepared you for going into this variation. Really think of the body as a sweater and wanting to unravel it in an intelligent way. It's the art of vinyasa krama, so sequencing with mindfulness. And let's rise up. If that's accessible to you, draw that leg out to the side. Bring your arms along the inside edge here. And we're going to rise up just slightly. Use your elbow to push that arm back. And draw hands into heart center. So coming more into an Ardha Malasana, so a half garland pose. Stand tall, really lift your heart shining toward the ceiling. Turn your heart to face towards your extended leg. Just creating a little room. Feeling a little more opening through the adductors on your bent leg. Allow that leg to drop down. We're just going to tuck it back behind the body. Allowing your torso to face toward that knee. So really starting to get into the inner thigh now. Take a nice big inhale breath. And just allow your heart to twist away from your knee. Continue to lift and lengthen rib cage away from the pelvis. And if you'd like to experience a little more sensation, allow your heart to start melting down. Same as in the last pose, we want to draw the sits bones back and draw the top of the head toward the toes. So you might feel like this variation is a little more intense than in the variation we were doing before with head to knee. So you can always go back to experiencing that posture, or see if you can get a new sensation and focus on that lengthening. Looking instead for where you feel restricted, and is there a place where you can invite some dynamic movement? And just think of what we're working on when we work in these areas, supporting the bladder meridian and the kidney meridian, tapping into fearlessness, determination, and endurance. Dissolving feelings of anxiety, fear-based thinking, worry. Let's slowly walk our hands up from here. And we're going to take our leg out to the side. And if you're on a yoga mat, you can line up the flat of your foot with the long edge of the yoga mat, flexing through the foot and really pressing into the lateral edge of the foot. This really supports putting pressure on one of the most important meridians for reducing anxiety. Acupuncture points. And I talk about this further in one of the supportive videos. So for now, just draw awareness to your ankle, the ankle bone, and press firmly into that lateral edge. And we're going to start to turn our torso so that your belly button is pointing towards the middle of the short edge of your mat. You can just allow your back leg to be soft and relaxed. Press firmly in through the hands, lifting up through that rib cage and lengthen your heart forward. If you need more sensation, what I suggest here is to actually come almost more into a twist where you're twisting towards your knee and coming down. Now, of course, we can do this from a seated posture as well, just by gently drawing that knee toward the chest. So if you're in a chair or on a stool, or you just prefer to experience it this way, you can bend through the knee and draw back. For now, we're going to extend through our right leg, bringing that left leg to the side. Take a little time to lift and get properly situated. And bringing our arm through, drawing back, so half garland pose or Ardha Malasana. If you need a little more sensation, take it more into a twist and draw open. And play with engaging the muscles in these poses and then letting go. We're going to shift so that we're facing the short edge of the mat again and finding that place where your body wants to play. And you can add a little more sensation through the gastrocs just by simply circling through the foot. coming into a Z pose, again lining up that flat edge of the foot with the long edge of the mat, turning your torso so that your navel points the middle of the short edge. Then we'll find that place where we can experience some sensation. And we can slowly rise up. And we're going to start where we began, at that half bound angle pose. So drawing our leg, placing it forward, belly button is going to be in line with our toes. And taking a nice fold forward. And what I'd like to see or feel is that engagement through the adductors. So using the strength of my legs to draw open into the pose. From here, let's open into a wide leg forward fold, taking our toes toward the outer edges of the mat. And for those of you who might be playing with this more from a seated posture today, what I suggest is actually drawing into a standing position with legs in wide leg stance. And just invite a bow onto a chair. I'll just demonstrate that for you briefly. So same posture, just a different perspective. Taking the legs wide apart and using a stool to support the upper body. What we're wanting to experience is that sensation of release through the inner thighs into the adductors and continuing to follow that thread through the back body. So we want to do this with the muscles engaged. Toes shining toward the ceiling, lengthening through the spine, thigh muscles and quadricep muscles engaged, strong through the legs, reaching out through the top of the head and finding that place of sensation. So looking for any places where you feel restriction or limitation, and just dance there. We're going to marinate in the pose for a little while. Letting the breath roll through the sides of the waist. As you stay in the posture, continue to lengthen the rib cage away from the hips, and with firmly engaged legs, pull the hips away from the rib cage. Take a moment just to invite some fluidity in the spine. You can do this from a seated position on the stool, just drawing legs wide, placing the elbows in front of the shin bones and drawing wide. You can do this from the floor. So bringing knees down and apart, feet together, bringing the arms through and holding. What we're wanting to start to invite is an opening through those inner thighs and a drawing back with the arms so that we get more sensation through the adductors. And of course, if you enjoy approaching the posture from a squatting position, positioning the feet, drawing the arms through, drawing legs wide. You can also sit on a block here. Keep lengthening through the spine, softening through the pelvic floor, and inviting the thighs to release. I'd like you to shift your weight towards your right foot, coming high onto the toes, and bring your left foot a little bit closer in, coming onto the toes as well. So standing tall. Try to draw the heels in towards one another. And we're going to shift so that our knees are pointing forward somewhat. And I'd like you to rise up so that we're coming into a nice standing forward fold. If you have high blood pressure, or if being inverted makes you feel uncomfortable, you can use the stool just to support the upper body. We want our ankle bones about fist width apart. And we're just going to stay here for a little while, allowing that spine to release, feeling gravity in a new way. We want to start to invite sensation by engaging these muscles now. If crow pose is familiar to you, so Bakasana, and you'd like to add that to your practice, you're welcome to do so at this point. So we're rising up onto our toes, drawing the knees slightly apart, and placing the shin bones onto the back of the arms up near the armpits. Hands are soft and open, just in the same way you would be when you stand. And we rock onto the fingertips. Using those adductors, so squeezing through the thighs, drawing everything into center. Let's bring our legs a little wider apart. You can always omit that pose at this point if that feels more comfortable for you. And let's bring the toes out, heels in, starting to come down into Devyasana, or goddess pose. Bring the legs wide. We're going to use our forearms first. Grounding through the heels. Feeling the adductors engage and open at the same time. Lift up onto the toes of this leg and then this leg, just inviting a little rocking, so some dynamic movement. And if you'd like a little more sensation, come out of the pose first. Flipping the palms, and we'll come down elevated this time. feeling those inner thighs engage. Rising up. Grounding through the heels. Take a moment to reconnect with your breath. Coming down one last time. Firm through the heels. Feel that same engagement through the inner thighs. Palms come forward into Yoni Mudra. Lift up onto the heels. And rise up. You can take a vinyasa at this point. Gently stepping to the top of the mat. If you prefer, just to take a little moment coming into downward dog or child's pose, sitting onto a chair. Please feel free to do that. If you'd like to join me in vinyasa, we can inhale, arms up and overhead. Exhaling. We'll take our time setting up with a downward dog first, peeking forward towards the hands, keeping space under the knuckles, wrapping the shoulders away from the ears, feeling spaciousness in the upper back. Just feel that sensation along the back body. Eyes can gaze straight down towards the floor, keeping the neck soft and relaxed. And just feel your back body coming alive. You might feel sensation through the calves or the hamstrings or the back. With your inhale breath rolling forward into plank pose. You can do a nice slow vinyasa like I'm doing, or if you prefer, you can do a few vinyasas if your pace is a little more quick than my own. Slowly coming down to the floor. And what we want to do here is just to awaken that back body. So lengthen the toes away from the shoulders. And we're going to lengthen the rib cage away from the hips. And gently reach back. Do what's accessible to you, whether that's arms apart or arms together. And we're going to lift and just awaken that back body. And I'd like you to do this at least 3 times, but listen to your breath. Go as slowly as you need to go. Wait for your heart rate to slow down, for your breath to be steady, and then gently come back in again when you feel ready. Don't worry about my pacing. You've done your 3 poses. Just bring your arms so that you can gently rest your head to the side on the top of your palms. Allow your shoulders to relax. We're going to slowly move into Shavasana, laying on the back. And I'll just say that if you have an established practice, you don't have any neck or spine issues, especially in the upper body, shoulders feel healthy, and headstand feels accessible to you, so Shirshasana, that can be a really nice element to complete the practice with. I'm not going to focus on teaching it today. If it's something that you are not familiar with, I really don't encourage you doing it until a teacher has properly shown you how to align your neck and to draw the shoulders so that you are not creating issues in the C-spine. But I will demonstrate it. And then we're just going to come down into a nice Shavasana to end our practice. If you'd like to just move to that ahead of time, please just go right ahead. So we can come down onto the floor. Just take a little time to invite space in your body, letting everything relax and become loose and fluid. A nice space in the low back. Arms wide. And I'd like you to take as long as you like in this posture. If it's available to you today, take 15 minutes and just really let the work of the practice marinate through your body. When you do come out of the pose, make sure to roll to one side. Take a little time. Feel a few breaths, and then slowly walk from the side into a seated posture. And from here, I'll just say namaste. I hope you enjoyed your practice with me.